or mixed, only because my window looks out on this intersection, and really, I don't know if I've seen adults cross the street, whereas I see kids cross it quite often. So that 30% statistic, that's going to be a child. And I mean, just to echo on what Dave had said, I mean, I too have witnessed those incredibly high speeds. The other piece that's heavily concerning to me is on the inside of that curve. What that map is not showing is that there's usually cars parked out in front of that curve, so it becomes a blind curve. So as the speeds are picking up after they turn off of Coal Ridge, a lot of times as they're flying around there, they're picking up some of that centrifugal force, but they also cannot see what's on the other side of that curve. And that's also then approaching the first intersection, which is something that is more scary as a parent. We almost have our kids walk to the speed bump, you know, what is that, 600 feet down the road just to cross, because of concerns of cars coming around that curve and not being able to see. And that's really the only points that I wanted to add to this.
Okay, so I'll add 2 points, and I have a slightly different perspective because I'm further up, more towards Holyoke, by that crosswalk. And, you know, in the distances you show, you know, 185 feet from Coal Ridge to that raised crosswalk. But I could almost argue that that raised crosswalk isn't really raised. You know, you see cars go across that thing way faster than 25 miles an hour. And I've gotten caught by that because I've driven up on Rock Creek Circle, you know, further up on the ridge above Superior, and seen one of those and take it at the speed I normally would take it at. And I almost dented my, you know, the underside of my car because it's so much more raised. I'm like, oh, this is what a raised crosswalk really should be. And I can't tell you how many times I see cars veer off to the right and come over like right next to the sidewalk because it's a little bit lower there. And so, you know, maybe that's a way to look at this, that the distance isn't really 185 feet, but it's 2,050 feet from Coal Ridge over to that next crosswalk, because, you know, that might be something to look at is that crosswalk really slowing down speeds? The only other thing I'll say is that when you're coming up Eldorado and you're getting towards Holyoke, there's a sign there that says, you know, 15-mile-an-hour speed limit in the crosswalk. There's a big tree there. Nobody sees that sign because it's completely blocked by the tree. And I was looking at, you know, the Google Street View right now, and you almost have to be right up on the intersection before you see that. And they're my neighbors, and I know they're working on, you know, trimming those trees back, but I think that's also one of the problems we have in that area. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is Derek and Kim. And like I said, we've been here since 2007. And unfortunately, we're right at the bend in the corner.
Are you on the inside or the outside?
We're on the
outside.
Outside, yeah.
We're on the corner of Firestone and
yeah. So, you know, one thing Eric pointed out is when cars are parked there, it serves as a blind corner. I would argue whether cars are parked there or not, it's a blind corner. I think it's very hard to see either direction as you're coming. You know, we've been here and raised 3 kids here, and we've never let them cross the street at our corner. It is incredible. I'm nervous crossing the street at our corner. So, or at where we sit in the bend. The other thing that, and I don't know if you have any insight into this as people who look at traffic patterns, but a unique feature of that bend is that for some reason, everybody tends to move towards the middle of the street as they're going around the bend in either direction. They don't stay in, you know, on their side of the street. So I don't know how many near misses I've seen as cars have come around that bend in opposite directions and didn't know that the other one was coming because of that blind corner nature of it, and have almost created an accident right there. You know, where we sit, we've had cars come up into our yard, hit our tree, especially when it gets icy and snowy because we're right at the bend. It's definitely I would say it's a very dangerous part of Eldorado. And it seems like there definitely has to be something done to slow cars down. I think 25 miles an hour around that bend is far too fast. And if it was appropriate and they were going 25, then they wouldn't need to actually feel the necessity of actually veering into the center or actually veering into the opposite side of the street. Yeah, that's my perspective. Kim, do you have anything?
Another issue we've had and experienced ourselves is if we're trying to turn left into our driveway, we've had cars try to come around us and nearly hit us as we're trying to turn into our driveway. So we have to be extremely deliberate about slowing down and turning blinkers on so that people understand that we are in fact turning into our house and it's not a situation where they should be going around us.
Great. Ming or Calvin?
Yeah, well, I'll echo one thing that's already been said, and it's about having our kids cross. Our kids will cross and go down Firestone Way to go to the bike park on a regular basis. And we always ask them, go over here to the street light and cross there, because otherwise you're right around this blind corner, and we're definitely not comfortable with you crossing there. Couple other things, that blind corner is going to get worse. Our neighbors planted several new trees in their front yard that are going to grow up and block that corner even more as those grow. They just got planted this summer, so it's not a big effect yet, but in a year or two, I think it's going to be a big effect. And then we live pretty close to Firestone, and what I find all the time is people come out of the curve and accelerate. And we hear it all the time, because you can hear when someone steps on the gas and takes off. So the speeds that you got, I don't believe are really representative of the ultimate speed that people are traveling through the neighborhood, just due to them like slowing down for the corner and then speeding up when they leave the corner.
Yeah, I just want to add that I do think people start to speed whenever they go through the, when they turn on the Eldorado Drive. And what I know, there's especially on the north. I mean, when they turn on the Eldorado Drive, there's lots of. I think most of they park the cars on the street, so that area I think people just drive slowly. But when they reach to the curve, and I don't think we have park on a curb, as often as those neighbors are at over the upstream. So I definitely think they start to speed up a little bit after, when they reach to the curve. And the most time when we back our car, from our driveway, we have to watch carefully over the cars coming from that direction. So there's some occasions that we it's pretty kind of the accident could be happening when we back up our car from our driveway, and we don't see when we start, but when we're up to the street and there's a car just suddenly in front of us. So that's happened quite amount of times. So that's a big concern about it. Great. I'm glad you've pointed all those things out. I think the raised crosswalk, that could be something we weren't thinking about, but maybe we look at replacing that and get, I know that's probably been deteriorating over time, and maybe we need to look at a raised crossing that is similar to other designs where we really slow the traffic down. Okay, so let me share my screen again, and we will.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure, Matt. Oh, Matt, did I miss you, Matt? Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. So I haven't been here very long. Moved here midsummer in the middle of the pandemic, and so yeah, I imagine traffic is a reduction or a fraction of what it normally is. A couple things I've noticed in the several near misses that we've had just simply backing out of our driveway is that there's probably two things unique to this neighborhood, and that is the age of the drivers. Probably all of the times that have backed out and nearly have been hit, it's been from, somebody who looks like they're pretty new to driving. And then also the percentage of electric vehicles, which have a much higher acceleration rate. And so coming out of that turn, I noticed you're measuring speed at the slowest point, and the data says that at the slowest point, it's 17% or over the speed limit of 25. However, there's no, I'm just kind of curious why no data was collected in the straightaways, which is where, most of the speeding is taking place. So I'm curious about that decision of where to collect speed data, and also the weight of the experience level of the drivers in this neighborhood, because that does seem to be a factor. And I'll just throw out this that we live right at Firestone Way in Eldorado on the west side, and there's been multiple occasions where people are jumping our sidewalk to make a U-turn to go back north, and I'm not really sure why there's such a high frequency of U-turns at this junction right at Firestone and Eldorado, but it is a hourly occurrence, and a lot of these contractor trucks or larger vehicles are really not made to make a U-turn in a residential street, but are doing so by taking the liberties of driving on sidewalks to make their turn radiuses work.
They're probably hearing from their navigator saying, make a U-turn.
Recalculating.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we put together some potential tools in our toolbox to address some of the issues that we thought. Of course, you guys are the ones that have a better feel of what the issues are, and maybe can give us also some ideas on potential measures, but we'll give you some, and then we'll walk through some of these traffic calming measures and talk about their effectiveness and so forth. So let Bill do that. Start with speed humps.
I had to get off mute. Okay, so any of our speed mitigation measures are trying to change your perception in a number of ways. We're trying to effectively build in friction into your travel. We can do that by making you in a vertical dimension, making you go up and over something. We could do that by making you wiggle around something in a horizontal way, or we can do that in just changing your perception of the appropriate speed. So one of the most effective mitigation tools in a neighborhood like this is the speed hump. You have to drive up and over. And so that physically wants you to slow down to comfortably traverse a speed hump. And they can be very effective in slowing down traffic, but it depends on how you build them, right? Because you guys have told us about the speed, the pedestrian crossing or raised pedestrian crossing that isn't very raised, and so it's not working as it might be intended. So how you build them is a factor. And Alex shown a couple that have been done in Superior, Castle Peak. Here's another one, and then this was a
And we actually have we have temporary speed humps as well,
Yep.
that we could install where we not sure if it's appropriate measure, and we can test out a location. So we have 2 of these to put in.
And they've been used in other places in town. Probably don't want to use them in the winter because you might scrape them off with a snowplow, but that is a possibility to test speed hump location. So another thing you can do to try to call attention to that curve is to use striping to identify the middle of the road with a yellow stripe in this case, to hopefully prevent folks from driving in the middle, as one of you mentioned tonight. The people drive in the middle of the road, at least in one direction. They're doing that to flatten out the curve, which allows you to drive faster. So hopefully by delineating the middle of the road might keep people in their lanes and hopefully slow down traffic a bit. But it's not self-enforcing like a speed hump is. You can drive across the yellow line even if it's there.
And Bill and I were debating earlier today things we could do on the stripe. I've seen in Arizona where you put these buttons in that once you cross it, you get this bump, and you feel that as you cross over the stripe. You can also do that with a rumble strip. You've probably seen that on the edge of the shoulders or on double yellow lines that also make a noise. There's downsides to that as residents, because all of a sudden now you're introducing some noise that you would hear a lot, but it would provide a feedback to those who do cross the line. The buttons are problematic in Colorado with snow, that our plows would probably take those out, so they would have to be continuously maintained. Bill, you have any comments on those?
Well, they're not used that often in Colorado for that reason, that their snow plows are hard on them. So, but in the reverse, the rumble strip is carved into the pavement, so the plows go right across them. But over time, rumble strips can fill in with debris, and so it's an ongoing maintenance issue to keep them clear and to maintain their effectiveness.
So we've had curves like on Madonna, and actually we put the yellow line in. We came back and then put the speed hump in down the road. So that's here you see the double yellow line in combination with the speed hump. On Daly, again we have another double yellow line, or a center yellow line that tries to keep people in their own lane.
Alex, can I ask you what your experience was with doing that? And did you find that it was actually helpful, or?
It's it's marginal. I think it provides, I think, some level of safety, that if there's an accident, we know that they crossed over. The line tells them they broke the law when they crossed the center line, and it gives a little more demarcation of where you're supposed to drive. Whether it slows speeds down, I'm not sure. You're going to have a measurable decrease.
Yeah, where we've tested it in other communities over the years, it's, as Alec mentioned, it's marginal. It's part of a package of treatments. I wouldn't say that in and of itself it's going to solve the problem, but it can contribute to helping. It might have a 1 or 2 mile an hour effect on some folks, rather than, it's not going to solve your problem in and of itself.
Then the other thing we could do is provide additional signing. Here's a location on Rock Creek Circle where we've had several accidents. Again, we have it down, not only a curve, but it's on a downgrade. That pole's been hit a couple times. So we've attempted to do additional signing. Not sure if that's appropriate in your neighborhood, whether you want additional signing like that, but we certainly could add that and maybe make that 15 miles an hour and get people's attention. I think I skipped speed feedback signs. Want to talk about those, Bill?
Yeah, so if you look closely in this photograph, you can see a radar speed sign. You're familiar with them. You post the speed limit, and then the lights come on and tell you how fast you're going, or tells you to slow down, or uses red and blue lights to indicate you're going too fast. And those can be effective in getting people's attention and getting them to slow down a bit, particularly when folks are not paying attention and didn't intend to be going that fast. And this kind of wakes them up a little bit. So they're not as effective as a physical device in the roadway, like a speed hump, but it certainly can help because, the people in this neighborhood, you all live there. And so it's not a cut through route. It's people that live in the neighborhood. You're familiar with the curve that's there. You drive it every day. And so these speed signs can help remind you when you're not paying attention.
Okay, so let's get your reaction to any of these or any other measures that you've seen around that you think might be appropriate, and we can give you our feedback on what we think, whether they'd be effective or not.
And Alex, if I could add one more thing on that's a radar speed sign. The last slide was where we have tried them in some neighborhoods. We have had some objection from folks that live near them because the light is on, shining in their bedroom window or whatever at night. So it's not it can come with a downside in that way.
I have a few comments on some of the slides that were shown. I can remember them all. So the last one, I think the last thing you were speaking about were speeds in particular. And I think we've all the residents have commented that yes, the speed limit is 25 miles per hour, but around that bend, it just feels like that is way too fast. If part of curvatures in streets is to slow cars down, that would make sense on a normal street, but not where driveways and cars are parked, where there's blind spots and children. I mean, if it was, just a regular kind of business street, then that would be fine, 25 miles per hour. But a resident, I think in all of Superior should not be 25 miles per hour. It should be 20. And then on the slide, that's that's our street. The street Graydon, which is right in front of my house. So, you're coming around that star and you're coming 21 to 25 miles per hour. And then you just keep going 21, 25 miles around that corner. And I'm curious what people on Graydon, if they were on this phone call, what they would say about people coming around that corner, how fast they're going. Because you should not be taking a corner at 20 miles per hour. You should be at 5 to 10, I believe is what the road tests are. Anyway, that, and I don't see any harm. Yeah, I saw you about your solutions. I don't see any harm in putting the yellow strip. I don't know if that fixes anything, but I certainly don't see any harm in doing it or negative side effects of it. I do feel that the crosswalk on by Holyoke and or Imperial definitely should be raised. It is just, it's almost like a way for people to just launch off and keep flying down the street is what it feels like, in my opinion. I mean, we crossed that to walk to school, and I've literally stood there waiting. I mean, cars don't stop, you know, like they don't even know it's a crosswalk. There's really not signage, or it's not apparent that it is a crosswalk. It just looks like some decorative bricks on the street. And so we have stood there waiting for cars to actually come to a stop, because they don't, unless, you know, I guess you just start going. But, you know, we teach our children to watch the cars, right? I mean, which, you know, they have to anyway. So those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and this is Derek. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Whoever's talking.
Go ahead, Matt.
No. You know, I also don't think the center line in and of itself is going to do anything. It'd be interesting if that was tied to, it seems like the most powerful thing in this case might end up being some raised speed bumps at both sides of the corner as it starts to straighten out, because that would slow traffic coming in and out, and get them on in a slower pattern heading towards the other crosswalks. And if those were enhanced, that might keep traffic a little slower. But you know, I think if people had to slow down because of speed bumps and there was a center line, that might help them navigate through the bend more safely. But I think it.
I'm sorry, Kim, I called you Matt. I thought you were Matt talking. Some of the other solutions that you guys were presenting, with the radar in particular, I am worried, as you had said, that most of the people coming through here are the residents, and with just a camera, I think it would work initially, but then people are going to have fatigue. And, you know, once they realize that there's no harm in going fast and that there's no tickets that are being issued, I just feel that it will end up just becoming a waste of money at that point. I'd like to see either a speed bump, something physical that will force you to stop. I like the stripe, but I think the stripe without the speed bump, as you guys were pointing out, would just be a marginal approach to this. I'd go as far as saying I wouldn't mind if there was a stop sign even. In looking over the rest of the street on Eldorado, one thing that was not mentioned is that I believe it's a relatively new stop sign that's at Monarch, which is further west past both the speed bumps. I don't remember it there that long ago, and maybe it was just I just don't take that route as much, but I know that there is a stop sign over there, and just something that would physically slow cars down rather than mentally do so would be a solution I'd like to see.
Other comments?
Yeah, stop sign at Firestone would seems like a low cost and highly effective measure. And I would also second speed bumps before and after the turns. I'm not sure where because the speed measurements were taken kind of in the middle of the turn. It's hard to say where the speed is worse. But speed bumps do seem like, you know, a physical deterrent and would be much more effective than you know, a line, but a line would also be useful in conjunction with those.
So this is Bill Fox again. I'm going to give you my standard response to the use of stop signs solely for speed mitigation. National standards suggest that you don't do that. And the reason is that when you have a stop sign that's not warranted and not warranted by the need to assign right of way at an intersection, then over time, people approach the stop sign repeatedly, especially in a neighborhood like this, and they rarely see somebody coming on the side street. So the need to stop to let somebody else out is rare. And so over time, people start rolling through the stop sign a little bit faster until you have stop signs that aren't complied with, which is very much a dangerous situation for a young pedestrian, say, that assumes folks are going to stop because of the stop sign. So anyway, national guidance is to do other things like the humps and the other things we've been talking about, rather than using a stop sign. If you had a heavy pedestrian crossing at a location that also at an intersection, then a stop sign might be the best thing to do. But in this case, we don't have a pedestrian crossing at the location suggested.
That makes sense.
Sorry, I'm trying to draw a yellow line, and I need the girls to help me out here.
Yeah, you got to practice that one, Alex. But we get the point. So Alex and I talked earlier today about where speed humps could be effective in this neighborhood and in the vicinity of this curve. And we agreed that while they can be used here, you don't want to do it in the curve itself, because when you have a vehicle that's rounding the curve, the speed hump will affect the suspension and the steering as you go over that hump, and it could contribute to somebody losing control on the curve in the worst part of the curve. So, but I am a fan of doing them on the approaches to the curve.
The other issues we have with the speed humps are that it affects parking. You really don't want to put them right in front of a driveway, for example. So you're driving over the speed hump to get to your driveway. We really need to get buy-in from, there's usually 3 or 4 adjacent residents that are, impacted with those speed humps and affecting parked vehicles and driveways and so forth. The one up here looks like it's at a pretty good location. There's nothing, doesn't look like any driveways on this side. I've kind of avoided the driveway here. It may affect, where you could park for this particular house. We may want to maybe able to move that up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, as far north as you can to avoid the curve, but I see where you're putting it and it makes some sense.
Yeah, and right, like you're right kind of by our house there, and we don't park on the street there that often, so that's, for us, it's not a big issue to have it fairly close to 1607 Eldorado.
So that's not a bad location, somewhere in that area. This is hard to tell. I got a driveway here and I got a driveway there. That's probably a side yard, so.
And I would say even at that location, even if it went to further to the east, just on the other side of that intersection, I can tell you that you'll probably get buy-off from 2 people on this call.
Mm-hmm. So moving it to this side here.
Yep.
I second that motion.
Bill, you think that's too close?
Oh, I think if you put it between, what's the name of that street? That's Grayson.
That's Graydon.
Graydon, if you put it just east of there, it appears to be some front yards without driveways there.
Right there.
I mean, I think it could function there. The next available spot is a little close to the curve, in my opinion, but so I think it could function there. And it also is a better spacing from the other one that's shown, because a lot of these traffic calming treatments are parts of a package. You want to space them out at 300, 400, 500 feet so that you get people's attention, and when they come through one device, they can almost see the next one or see the next one. And so the incentive to speed up in between is not as high. So I think those two locations would certainly do the trick in the vicinity of this curve. Another thing I would say, I mean, one of the most effective traffic calming measures on a neighborhood setting like this is on-street parking. We've talked about the perils of parking in front of your house, but if everybody parked in the street, people would drive slower. I'm not suggesting that, I'm just as an indication of it's part of that visual friction that some of these devices achieve.
Well, that's definitely true. We have noticed when we park a car in front of our house, people going south into the curve do slow down. So definitely true.
They do. On the other hand, the second night I parked my car out there, it got run into.
There is that. Yeah. And you could use the signs that have been talked about, signs calling attention to the curve. There, I noticed there is some signing on the approaches to the pedestrian crossing, the red one there. But you could sign this curve, but with a familiar driver population in this neighborhood, eventually signs disappear. You don't see them after a while. So it may help for the person that's new or unfamiliar, but eventually those signs are less effective.
Yeah, and I agree with one of the folks on here mentioned the age, and you know, I could tell you the cars of most of the people who speed around here. I'll tell you that, but most of them are younger drivers, and we all are, you know, parents with kids in that range are going to be in that range in the next 3 to 8 years. So I think that's the predominant population, like one person mentioned, and that definitely I think has more sign fatigue and requires more physical type barriers. Even the, you know, the flashing, you know, that slows me down on 88th. It doesn't slow a lot of people down. Cops do, but for the young kids, I don't know if that's as effective.
Right. Again, over time, people get hardened to things they see every day, and they become less effective, whereas the speed hump never goes away.
So, any other ideas? And do these things look good? We could put the yellow line in there. I think that would be another reinforced to stay in your lane.
Alex, I was just curious, are there different designs of speed humps, like a gradual bump thing or something like that?
We want to address that?
Well, there certainly are different designs that you can use. There's a national standard design that supposedly is effective at you know, that when you drive over it at 20 miles an hour, say it's not that uncomfortable. The idea is to try not to penalize people that are obeying the speed limit, but get the attention of the people that are going too fast. There's a fine line. I've seen them built that are way too aggressive. I mean, these are not like bumps in a movie theater parking lot, right? These are humps that can be traversed at a reasonable speed, but at a higher speed, they get your attention. There are different designs, and a raised pedestrian crossing is different than a speed hump, for example, because at a pedestrian crossing, you go up and then you go across the crosswalk and then you go back down, whereas these are more of a kind of a sinusoidal curve up and down. Also keep in mind that these are impactful to emergency response vehicles as well. So if they get too aggressive, the fire departments and the ambulance drivers will certainly object.
And just to clarify, they, sorry, are they the full width of the street, or are they able to be kind of circumvented by, you know?
Well, that's a good question. It's a good question. The ones that Alex is going to show you here, they ramp down on the outsides so that they match the flow lines. The reason being that you still want stormwater to be able to flow down the gutter. And if you build them all the way to the top of the curb on the ends at the sidewalk, then you need to build curb chases or put in storm drainage, have inlets, which gets very expensive in a hurry. So,
Makes sense.
but because of that, and somebody mentioned it already tonight, that when you do taper them down to the flow lines on this outside edges, cars figure that out too, right? So they can mitigate the effectiveness of the speed bump hump by putting one wheel over there in the gutter, because then only half your car has to go up and down, and you can drive it a little faster. And people do that. So there again, if you if you live near one of these on a straight stretch, park your car right there, and they can't do that.
So to mitigate the emergency vehicle issue, jurisdictions are starting to use what's called speed cushions, where they take a speed hump like this and they actually truncate it, put an opening here, and so you may have a hump like that. You may have another one in the middle. You may have 3, maybe 4 humps with a place here for fire trucks that they're designed so the 2 wheels of a fire truck can go through those openings and not hit any of the speed hump. So it's another aspect of the design, just a little harder to build.
Right, and and that has the same effect that if you put one of your automobile wheels in that groove, in one of the grooves, then you only go over half of the speed hump. Your vehicle only goes over half. So yes, it can help mitigate it for emergency vehicles, but it also can be a little less effective.
So it looks like we have 4 measures we could implement here. What about signing? Anybody want to look at additional signing in the area? Either a curve warning sign with, kind of an arrow. You could put a 15-mile-an-hour limit on that, speed limit on it. Again, we get a lot of complaints about sign pollution. We have signs all over the place. And again, you have people that get stuck with having another sign in their front yard. So,
Ryan mentioned earlier that you can't see that 15-mile-an-hour at the speed hump. And honestly, I don't know if it does much. So I don't know what signage does. We put a sign in our yard, drive like your kids live here. Neighbors have, 20 is good. And I don't know what effect it really has. So I think, in my humble opinion, it's more pollution than value.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I'm looking in Street View, and a couple of the signs in this neighborhood are in trees. So you can't even read them. So a little bit of vegetation control would be in order on the existing signs. But I think with this, having the speed humps really is what's going to make the difference, not the signs.
So what are next steps, and how does this process work?
Okay, well, I can tell you that a speed hump costs about $13,000 to install. So you have 2 speed humps, you're up to $26,000. To replace the pedestrian crosswalk, that may be $20,000 to $25,000. So this is not a trivial budget item. That we have a traffic calming budget, and it's about $50,000 a year, and we've already spent next year's with other neighborhoods. So, but it's, you get on the list, or the board makes an exception and gives us more money. So, but I would like to know, if we don't have the money to do all this, can we prioritize these measures? So I'd like maybe to see if we can get a consensus on what's the highest priority. Would it be replacing the crosswalk? It seems like that's already there, that you may want to get speed hump as a higher priority. And which of these is more important than than the others. So anybody want to give a shot on prioritizing 1, 2, and 3 of those 2 speed humps and the crosswalk?
Yeah, I'll vote for that crosswalk or the speed bump that's kind of right in the middle, right before Graydon. That'd be my
Is
number 1.
That one?
Yeah, I live closer to the northern one, so that would be mine, but it makes sense that whichever people live next to is probably their priority.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I live closer to the crosswalk, but I think that middle speed bump being halfway in between probably would be my vote.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got 2 for that one.
yeah, Derek and Kim would agree with that center one.
We're closest to that middle speed bump, so we're biased there. We're also willing to sell lemonade and brownies to raise the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
I told the girls it's a lot have to sell.
Yeah, the most the impact to us is the one that on the curve. I definitely will vote on the one on the north side. So you would vote for the one up here? Yeah, the one near the Firestone. Okay.
And Susan and I would vote for the north one, of course, but just because it's right in front of our house.
All right, so we have kind of a split vote. That's fine, but it would make sense. I think to introduce a new feature, and maybe we can do the 2 speed humps, come back another year, and replace the crosswalk. Okay, so let's wrap this up, and we'll talk about next steps. We'll present the results, the minutes of this meeting and the notes that we have. I didn't start recording until after my presentation, but I got most of your comments in there. So we'll present notes from this meeting and that little plan that we had there with the 3-4 features to the Transportation Safety Committee. Normally we meet 4 to 6 times a year. We're going to have a meeting in December, but with the election, we'll have a new board member that needs to be appointed to the TSC. So the next meeting may not be till February 1st, I think would be the next Monday. So I'll keep you apprised. Be nice if you can send me your email addresses. If you got the notice, my email is probably on there. So if you want to be informed of the next meeting and get the notes that I write up for that, if you can send me an email and I can make sure you're plugged into the next steps. So we would go to the TSC in February, get their recommendations about this. They'll look at all the speed data and all the data we've collected, listen to your comments, and then look at the plan and decide what they would like to do. I know they are looking for consensus in the neighborhood, and that if they don't see any major opposition, I'm sure they will endorse your plan. Then we'd have to go to the town board if we're, the ultimate amount of money is, $40,000 or $50,000, and that's a budget decision, and the board will have to decide is that appropriate to allocate those funds to this project in light of all the other things the town has to do.
Alex, that TSC meeting is an opportunity to voice your opinion at that time, correct? For
Yes, so once that's on, that's why I want your email addresses. I can send you the agenda so you know when it will be discussed at that meeting, or if it hasn't, if they can't meet that day and decide to do it on another day, I can inform you when the next meeting would be. And then they always like to hear from the neighborhood, so I think you need to marshal your troops and make sure you have people that are willing to come and voice your opinions and your needs and so forth, to make your needs known to the TSC.
Also want to say thank you to the Kramer girls who went around door to door and got everybody involved. I really appreciate that.
Well, I want to
effort.
hear from them. What do you think? Should we go forward with this plan?
Yes.
Yeah, nice.
I'd like to say thanks to Alex and Bill. I mean, appreciate the time and the effort and the consideration, and all the work and analysis, and having this meeting tonight.
Again, you know, we collect data, but you're a scientist and we can share that data. But in the end, this is your neighborhood. You have to live with things. You know, you deal with the traffic on a day-to-day basis. And if we want to come up with a plan that suits your needs, we also would like you to make sure your neighbors are in agreement too. We don't want people coming out of the woods and saying we don't want any speed humps in this neighborhood, or so that we can have.
And that could happen. That could happen.
We had one.
Yeah.
We had
Yeah,
one.
we had a neighborhood up in the Pitkin area, North Pitkin, where we had several meetings and there was a lot of opposition to speed humps, and we finally resolved all that. So the better consensus we can have, the better.
I agree. Yeah, the one we had south, they're moving, but they own really nice sports cars, so I'm concerned.
Right.
And they don't buy lemonade.
They don't have lemonade either. Thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. We'll definitely make sure we're at that meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks for your help, and thanks for starting the process and participating.
Very good.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
Take care.